Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. Got a really interesting question from a client the other day. It's more of a complaint than a question. And the complaint was, I just hate selling. I hate it. He goes, that's my issue. My issue is I hate selling. I don't like it. Makes me uncomfortable. And I said, why does it make you uncomfortable? And he goes, I don't like asking people for things. I don't like needing things. I don't like, trying to convince someone to do something. I feel like my expertise should speak for itself. And it's not comfortable to me to have to ask for the business or convince somebody to do business with me. I find that uncomfortable. What do you think I said? You weren't on this call.
I was just saying I wish I had been on that call because that usually opens the gates. That usually sets you on a path. So tell me.
I said two words and then I shut up for a few seconds, let it sink in. And they were, stop selling. And there was this look of bewilderment on his face, right? Like, is this not a marketing and sales training program? Like, isn't that why I'm here, to learn how to sell? And you're going to tell me to stop selling? What in the world are you talking about? And I just said, stop selling. Why did I say that, Carrie?
Well, I mean, what their entire question shows, I don't know who asked, is this mindset that I find fascinating, right? That taking a solution to someone that they desperately need is somehow in service to you, right? You begging for business, you asking for something. And it's fascinating to sort of see the dichotomy from someone who says my expertise should speak for itself. Like I have that level of confidence. And also taking that expertise to the market is somehow uncomfortable because I'm asking for something. I'm doing it for me. And I always find that disconnect so interesting.
If I go to the Apple store and I buy myself an iPhone, who's more excited about the purchase? Me or the guy at the Apple store?
Exactly. Genius Bar guy, he's having a good day, but that's not changing it for him.
That's what they do. They sell phones and computers or whatnot. Me, the buyer, I'm the one who's excited because I get this new thing that I can use, can improve my life, etc. I go to buy a car. Who's more? And the salesperson in the vehicle example, they're collecting a commission. There's a level of happy, absolutely. But honestly, whose life is being more impacted? The salesperson sells 30 cars a month. I buy a car once every 3, 4, 5 years.
Yep.
It's me every 2 years, but
I was going to say a little more often than that,
right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, like consultants, service providers, experts, they have this. I think a big part of it is going through sales training programs or entertaining sales and selling advice that's not geared towards the expert service provider is where a lot of the trouble comes. But the reality is, to your point, if you're solving a client's problem, who really wins? When there's a transaction, like who's really winning? Yeah, you collect a check, fine. But the client's, problem is going to be overcome. Their results and their outcomes are going to shift. Their business operation, personal lives as a result are going to tangibly change through the work you're doing with them. So who's a real winner here?
Well, there's also this belief, you talked about people going through sales training or, seeing that model. There's this fascinating belief that salespeople are entirely different than everybody else, right? Somehow they were born, and I'm sure this, yes, occasionally you get the kid that you're like, okay, that one's going to be a salesperson. We get it. But this vision that people have that there's this innate skill set that just exists within somebody and it's magical and special and not a thing that someone else can do, right? And I think that comes from this notion of, the trope around salespeople and who they are and how they conduct themselves, and maybe some of the less than above board things that they may or may not do, which is a very different thing than having a conversation with somebody, understanding what their needs are, and seeing if there's a path for you to serve those needs. That's what a good salesperson does. All those other trappings and bells and whistles and flash and shiny suits, those aren't the things that make people good salespeople.
Yeah, it's funny. I was brushing up on Curb Your Enthusiasm last night. And so there's this episode where George, they're doing like a reunion episode for Seinfeld. Okay. And George Costanza, if you've seen Seinfeld, you know who I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Seinfeld, then I really can't help you. George Costanza writes a book. And I don't know if this is for the show or if this is actually happened in real life. I have no idea. And the book is called Acting Without Acting. And there's a hilarious bit that's completely irrelevant here where Jerry and Larry are talking about it. And like, what the hell does that mean? Acting without acting. How do you act without acting? Right. And George's explanation, or Jason Alexander, his real name's explanation, is, well, good actors, great actors, they're acting, but you can't see the craft. You can't see what they're doing. It just feels natural. Yes, they're acting, but without the performance of acting, it feels real. And then Jerry goes, so they're just acting, right? But the same is true for salespeople. Is, the best salespeople are not really selling, to your point. It's selling without selling. Even professional commission-only salespeople who are not expert service providers, who are just selling software or whatever for a living, the best ones, you don't feel like you're being sold to. You don't feel like they're pitching you anything. You feel like they genuinely have your best interests in mind, because they do. That the best ones genuinely have your best interests in mind. And so the speech that ensued in this conversation went a few different ways. Number one, the premise here has to be that you've got the best interest of your client at heart. Right away, if you are worried about feeling like a salesperson or being perceived as a salesperson or asking for something, right away, you are thinking about the wrong person. You're thinking about yourself and how you feel and how you're being perceived, whereas the entire sales conversation needs to be squarely focused on the prospect and their needs and their challenges and their priorities. That's the first problem. The second problem is you're undervaluing what you deliver. If you think you're getting something and they're losing something, like it's some kind of zero-sum game, you are likely considerably undervaluing the value that you create and the impact that has on the client and the client's organization. A sale is not a zero-sum game. It's not like they give you money and then you get money and they lose money. No, they give you money and they get a tremendous outcome and a result. And if you're not clear on what that is and how it looks, that's your real problem. It's not sales. And the third issue is, if that's how your sales conversations feel, that tells me how your marketing is working. Because sales conversations where you feel like you're trying to get something and you're trying to convince somebody, you have to persuade somebody, those usually come about from either, no marketing at all or shoddy marketing. That's very indicative of like a cold outreach strategy. I spammed a bunch of people on LinkedIn, or I sent some cold emails, and I get this call. And the call is like, the client's almost like, who are you and why should I care? And you have to put on a show and like sing and dance to get their attention and convince them. Whereas if we do marketing right, marketing predisposes you as the obvious choice in the mind of the client. They become predisposed to your solution before they ever talk to you. And those conversations feel completely different. So the example I gave was, in our marketing funnel, we have a video that we want people to watch before they talk to our team. And, compliance is never 100%, right? And what we find is, when people have watched this 20-minute video that articulates, what we do and how we do it and, our value proposition and all this fun stuff, right? When they watch it, they're very leaned into the conversation. They get it. They see the value. They're interested. And when they haven't watched it, it's like, who are you guys? What am I doing here? Right? So the big question is, among other things, what are you doing before the sales conversation to predispose your prospect to your solution? And if the answer is nothing, it's going to be a grind.
Yeah, and that has such power to just change the conversation, to your point. But even to the extent where someone will reach out to you, right? They've seen your marketing, they've consumed your content, whatever it is that you've done has worked. And their question is not going to be, what can you do for me? Their question is, on the heels of them saying, wow, this is amazing, am I someone that you could potentially work with? Like, they are now coming to the table and asking the question, right? And that changes everything, because now you're in a place where you can more easily probably kind of slide in, understand what they're talking about, and really make an educated decision as to, whether or not you are the right person to help them. And in my experience, who is best equipped to have a conversation where you are assessing needs, where you are determining, what the solution is? It's these consultants who immediately say that they are not able to have, are not capable of having a solid sales conversation.
One of my favorite books by Lencioni. What's his first name? Patrick, is it?
Patrick.
Patrick Lencioni. Actually, not one of my favorites, but probably the first one I read from him was a book called Getting Naked. And it was about his initial foray into consulting. And he tells these stories about how he started getting clients. And the way he started getting clients was he just started consulting. He just started going in and talking to clients, prospects at the time, and taking notes and kind of beginning the consulting process. And then it wasn't long before the clients were getting such considerable value from those conversations that they formalized the agreements into some kind of a contract. Now, I think you take that too far. There's some challenges with that strategy, but there's some real truth to that. If your initial discovery call conversation, if it feels more like a consultative conversation than a sales conversation, you're doing something right. Absolutely. But if the prospect feels like you're asking some templated questions to bait them into an offer, and anything they tell you can and will be held against them in the sales conversation, and there's these guards up, and it's just like question answer, and there's nothing natural or fluid about it, then yeah, that's going to feel like a sales conversation, and they're going to resist because no one likes being sold to, but everyone loves to buy.